Hey everyone, I know that I said I was going to do my CPS story for the 100 subscribers like last month, but I've had a lot going on, and you have to understand it's something that's really emotional for me to talk about, and which I'm going to try to not be emotional, like just detach while I try to get through this. And this was also a 3-year long battle that I'm going to try to condense down as little as possible. Like I said, I'm going to try to give you the Reader's Digest version and be completely truthful and honest about everything. I don't care if it makes me look bad, and I admit that I did make, some mistakes that led to CPS involvement. Um, like no matter how minor the mistakes were, um, you know, I don't think it really matters how big or small the mistakes are that you make. It doesn't give the system the right to be corrupt and to steal your children from you. Um, if someone's having problems, they should help rather than kick them out while they're down and rob them. Um, So I'm going to try to get through this as quickly as possible. I will go into details later if any of y'all have questions. I might do another detailed video in the future when I have more time and more of the means and everything. But for now, I'm going to try to keep as brief as possible. I am going to have live Q&As. So if you have any questions, either put them in the comments or wait until I go live and you can ask me some comments, some questions. Anyway, so, okay, I'm not even sure where to start with this. In 2014 is when I had my daughter. There was a lot of stuff going on. I think I was on the verge of a nervous breakdown. Um, I had started to drink periodically at this point after several months of sleep deprivation. And I think I might have also been suffering a little bit from postpartum depression. And I was waiting for that summer to come around where I was on a waiting list for a daycare so that would accept both of my kids' ages at that time. So I was on a waiting list for them, for my kids. And I was just trying to do what I could to survive. I never drank around my children. I want to make that abundantly clear. I'm not excusing the fact that I ever drank at all because I do not believe in any use of substances like alcohol or any other drug. I am drinking soda right now, and that's really bad, but I prefer to abstain from anything, but especially anything mind altering like alcohol. I don't believe in drinking at all. Like, even if it's one sip, I don't believe in that. I didn't believe in that then, but, I don't do that at all now. I haven't had any alcohol to drink since November 2014. So, but, however, I had started to drink periodically, occasionally, when I did not have my children with me. And it was usually at night where they were spending the night with their dad or at my mom's. I lived with my mom, but there were some times where I would go to the trailer park or go somewhere else and I would drink that night. And, like, this is really a lot more details than I'm even comfortable sharing because I know that it sounds bad. And I knew that it was bad, which was why I was trying to do the healthiest choice possible, which was to not do it around my children. And basically just try to survive until I could get help for, my kids so that I could sleep. I was basically using alcohol as a substitute for sleep because I was not getting any sleep. I slept about 30 minutes a night when I took care of my kids. And so then, like, on the occasional day that I didn't have them, I would end up drinking and like just kind of like going into this full body relaxation and everything, and that was not the right way to handle it. I knew it wasn't, but it was like a quick fix, that I felt like I wouldn't have to do that long because pretty soon I was going to have help. So anyway, all those excuses aside, I know it was the wrong thing to do, and it opened up the door for people to take advantage of me and my children. So that's basically how this ended up getting started. There was some stuff going on. I got a babysitter because I really just needed sleep, and because I ended up realizing that's what I was doing. I was substituting alcohol for sleep, and I'm like, I just need sleep. I need 3 days to just sleep, and I know if I could just rest for 3 days that I will be able to take care of my kids for like another month or two without using alcohol, and until the waiting period was over. Like I don't even think, no, I didn't have 2 months left. I think I only had 1 month left that I had to make it before they would both be in a daycare together. And I was going to school full time too, which at this point I had ended up having to drop out of school because of transportation issues. So I got a babysitter who had called CPS on me years ago when she had a miscarriage and I gave birth to my son. I still don't know the reason other than that because she had a miscarriage. But, so I already knew that I shouldn't have trusted her, but I thought, well, she has 2 kids of her own now. She's got a baby about the same age as my daughter, so, maybe she's grown up in the last few years and, isn't like that anymore. Maybe she don't need to be jealous because I have something she wants when she has 2 kids now. So I stupidly, after a month of her begging me, let her talk me into giving her my baby. My son was with my mama. He should have never even been involved in the CPS case because he wasn't. He was with my mom. He wasn't with the babysitter that made this report. Stuff ended up happening. Basically, she ended up lying. I'm not going to go into details, but I gave her more than enough stuff for my daughter. And even in the middle of those 3 days she was supposed to keep my daughter, I brought her even more stuff because she claimed to have ran out of stuff. I believe she was using my daughter's things for her own baby, which I was fine with. I was more than happy to help her with her baby as long as she was taking good care of my daughter. So on the 3rd day, she ended up talking me into letting her stay another night. I did not drink during this whole time. I actually slept for most of it. And I was more than ready to take my daughter back and ended up letting her talk me into keeping her another night. I'm not going to go into the details why. You can ask me that question later in the comments, and I will get around to answering them. So needless to say, she ends up keeping my daughter another night and files a police report for me abandoning my daughter, and I didn't even know that that's what it was. And this ended up leading to me being brutalized by the police officer that was sent out to talk to me. But he didn't talk to me. He didn't tell me what was going on. Again, I'm going to leave out details until the Q&A. But, so, I end up going to jail for assault, communicating threats, and child neglect. The supposed allegation, which was proven to be false, was that I had left my daughter with her for over a week without food, clothes, or diapers. Again, this allegation was proven to be false. I spent some time in jail, and when I got out, I felt like everyone was against me, and I felt like I kind of just had a nervous breakdown and gave up, and was just like, I felt like a complete failure. Like, I couldn't believe this happened to me. And with the child neglect charge, that really intimidated me, because I have never known anybody to get a criminal child neglect charge that has ever gotten their kids back. And so I was really intimidated by that. So I gave up before the whole thing even got started. I was like, I found out my kids were with my mama, and that she was basically in line to get custody for my kids. You know, that all I had to do was not do anything, was just disappear from the picture, and my mother would end up with my children. And the caseworker at the time even told my mama, if you get custody, like, you know, your daughter can't live with you now, but if you get custody of these kids, then you can do whatever you want. You know, we will close the case, and, you know, your daughter can come back home. So that was pretty much the plan. I didn't know that's what my mama's plan was. My plan was just to disappear from everyone's life. And I kind of went into a really dark depression too. I moved to a different county with my boyfriend at the time, who is now my ex-fiance, Johnny. And moved to a different county and became homeless because I was living with my mom at the time and didn't have the means to get a place of my own on the disability check that I had. So I became homeless for, well, 9 months, but the first 6 months of it, I was binge drinking every single night, just hoping that when I would go to sleep that I wouldn't wake up. I was hoping I was going to get alcohol poisoning and die in my sleep, or like maybe, you know, vomit and like breathe in my vomit and die in my sleep. Like, that was really my goal. Every single day I would begin to drink and hope that I would black out and not ever come back to. I felt like my mom and my kids were better off without me. I was just in a really dark place. You know, I felt like I had already lost them. I had already given up and lost them and was a failure. However, was it even 6 months? Oh, let me see. Okay, 5 months. It was 5 months that I lived like this. And then it was in November. It was right around the time of my birthday. October was a rough month for me. There was a lot of things that happened. I had actually ended up being raped by 2 men in Boone, North Carolina, the next county over that I was in, because of my homelessness. And so I think that's probably one reason why things like the drinking and stuff and the depression kind of got extended out, was because of that experience, because that happened about halfway through this. And I think that probably extended it, because I was starting to feel better about myself around the time that happened, and that just completely depleted me. And people were also accusing me of being a liar. Like, everyone in the homeless community and circle up there kind of ran a hate campaign against me. So it was just a really dark place in my life. But I quit drinking entirely. I don't know what happened, but at some point I just was like, it started affecting me really badly, where I wasn't able to drink at all without my heart feeling like it was going to burst out of my chest. I couldn't even get drunk. That's how badly the alcohol was affecting me. Somebody told me that it could have been that I had damaged my liver or something, and that maybe that's why I had an intolerance for it. I don't know. I've never tested it again since November 2014. So I quit drinking entirely, and I found out that my kid's dad, he was telling me him and the woman he left us for were going to get my children. And because of things that had went on with them and stuff, I'm like, that's the last thing that I would ever want for my children. I didn't trust the woman he was with either. So I that kind of got me fired up to do something, because I was trying to protect them from going to that place. You know, I was okay with them going to my mama. I was willing to sign my custodial rights, not my parental rights, but my custodial rights over to my mother. I wanted Donnie to do the same thing, my kid's dad, but he refused and was acting like he was going to get the kids. Come to find out later on, he actually hadn't done anything at all other than take one drug test, I think. But I went to parenting classes. I got a place in Boone. That didn't last very long because Johnny went to jail, which kind of left me unable, like I could not afford a place in Boone. I had to come back to Wilkes. In the transition of this, I ended up getting a car and came back to Wilkes. I'd completed my parenting classes, and the caseworker changed. And this was when things got really bad. Just so you guys know, kind of like the timeline, this started like May 30th of 2014. And by this point, it was March or April 2015 when the caseworker changed. And when I met her, she told me that her goal was adoption. And I was like, well, yeah, but I'm coming to talk to you about my case plan, you know, that what if I complete, you know, my, you know, case plan, my reunification plan. And she laughed at me and said that it didn't matter if I completed the case plan or not, that her goal was adoption. But that I could complete it if I wanted to, but she was going to recommend adoption. And, so, you know, I just did what I tried to do with completing the case plan. It started out being I just had to complete parenting classes and maintain SSI, which I did, and maintain stable housing. Oh, and get a mental health and substance abuse check. I passed that, and I did get a house down here in Wilkes. But right before I got a house down in Wilkes, someone or someone's apparently, I mean, for all we know, the caseworker made it up and just came and took the kids, and that's, I wouldn't be surprised about that. But it's come to light that there were also other people who were pretending to be for us that were really against us. And someone was reporting saying I was staying at the residence with my children, and the caseworker came and took my kids from the home. She put them in foster care, and they stayed at like one place for a week, and then she moved them somewhere outside the county. And then that place said that they basically didn't want my son, and so she allowed them to keep my daughter and moved my son to another foster care, and basically said a lot of bad things about him, that he wasn't adjusting well and everything because he would cry to come home or cry to go to grandma's every single day. So when that happened, you know, I, you know, was like really, you know, trying hard to find something, and I got a place. I maintained that place for well over a year. I actually maintained it until after the court hearings was complete. So, like I said, all that. Okay, so then they refined the case plan, And what did they add to it? They added I needed a psychological evaluation and to take drug tests, that I could only have supervised visits through the state, whereas before that it was only supervised visits from my mother, And they had the previous caseworker had allowed me to come and stay at my mom's for a couple of days to see the kids. She was like, it's up to her discretion. But things changed when this new caseworker came, and so I was only allowed supervised visitation, per me passing a drug test, which I did. There was some transportation issues at the beginning of that, where it was scheduled for every 2 weeks, and I was having to go to Greensboro, like a 2.5-hour one-way drive to see the kids, and that was too hard for me to do. And then I had also missed a couple of drug tests because of having the transportation issues or communication issues. But, once it went down to it being once a month, and I didn't have any issues with meeting my drug tests and the visitation and everything. There might have been like one after that around the holidays, I think, that I had missed. I'm not sure of that exactly. I don't want to go into details. But everything was going fine. I was having issues with the psychological evaluation. Couldn't really find anyone that could do that. And then the couple people I did find that said that they could do a psychological evaluation for parenting, the caseworker ended up saying no, that they wouldn't accept them, that I needed to go to their caseworker or to their psychologist. And I'm like, I don't want to go to your psychologist, because, I already knew before ever getting involved with CPS that they were corrupt, but I didn't know how corrupt the organization and the system was until I became personally involved in the system and started doing research on how do you get your kids back and everything, and realized just how deep this went. But I went to that and thought that everything was fine, and when the results came in, mind you, I paid money to this psychologist for these tests that she did in her office with me, and after interviewing me, she changed almost everything that I had said, and like she either didn't mention something important that I did say that would have made me look good, or she would just change something I said to being something else, or saying it in a way that sounded bad, or she would just completely fabricate a whole new thing that I didn't even say. It never came out my mouth. I wish back then that I would have had the sense to have recorded. I wish I would have started recording then, but I didn't realize that I needed to do that until later. It was after this I realized just how corrupt the system was. And so, she lied and gave a phony recommendation. So, because I got their, check mark on the list done, I went and I paid $400 to get another psychological evaluation by someone of my choice. And all of it was contradicting what their psychologist said, and was encouraging the court to give me my children back, and was supportive evidence for me. So I completed the case plan. The only thing that there was an issue with was the child support because of me being on SSI. I didn't realize there was an exact form that they needed to know, because I kept going to them saying, okay, they're telling me I got to pay you child support. And they're like, no, that you can't pay child support. And I'm like, well, they're saying it's voluntary. And they're like, no, we don't know nothing about that. And so I'm running back and forth between CPS and child support, trying to figure out how to do this. And finally, the lady in the office, the manager over child support, she was like, let me call your caseworker. Let me find out what it is exactly they keep sending you here for, because I see where you've been here 3 times now, and called several other times. And so she finally got a hold of the caseworker, and the caseworker gave her the exact form. Like, she had to kind of dig it out of her, but she finally gave her the exact form number she needed to look up. And so then I was set up to make child support payments. This was December of 2015. So the permanency hearing, I think that's what it's called. That wasn't until May. There was another court date somewhere in between there, but I don't even know what the point was of that court date. It's like basically nothing got said or done, really. Oh wait, there was another court date, because that gets to the last visit. The last time that I seen my children was February 2016. That's the last visit we had. You've probably seen the videos on my channel. That was when I had realized, when I got their false report from their psychologist, and I kept going to court and hearing these lies be said by caseworkers, that I knew I needed some evidence to support me, because they kept saying, they kept lying about how the visits went, and saying that there was no bond between me and my children, and just a whole bunch of things. And saying I did things I didn't do, and said things I didn't say, or didn't do things I should have done that I did do. So it was just several different things. It's been so long, and I've kind of the details I've tried to avoid. I went through a period where I talked about this a lot, like every single day with people, and I've been avoiding it for a year or so now. So I'm sorry, I don't remember anything specific right now. I'd have to go look back at the paperwork. Anyway, so that's why I decided to record the visit, which it's always awkward having to try to be normal around a caseworker that is glaring at you and your children, you know, like just hoping one of you would do something wrong. Especially, well, I'm not going to get into details. But that's why I decided to record it, and then I also felt really weird about recording it, so I do know I probably kind of seemed weird during that visit. Probably extra stressed, intense, or unemotional, and you know, that's kind of like my reaction to things, is I dissociate and just try to get through the mode or action, you know, until it's safe to be normal again. And so it's like I try to act normal, but it doesn't really seem normal. Does that make sense? Just because there's not as much of the emotions behind it. So I don't know. I guess I just kind of think I looked weird in a couple of the videos myself. But I ended up accidentally catching my son crying, and when that got posted on YouTube, they ended up finding out about it, and they didn't communicate to me that they had even seen this video or reprimand me for videoing. They didn't do any of that. Instead, they just avoided all my phone calls. I left message after message, called constantly. Where's my visit? You know, and then y'all see the video of that where I went to be like, hey, it has been over a month since I've had a visit, and you've yet to drug test me, and you're not answering any of my emails or any of my calls. Well, after that video, they ended up messaging me saying that they had all had a meeting and thought that it was unsafe for me to continue having visitation with my children. Didn't say why or anything. So there ended up being a court date for me to try to get visitation back. And the judge was like, said that basically had promised that he would give me visitation back if I took the video down. So I took the video back down. At this point, it doesn't matter, because it's not an actual legal order anyway. It was supposed to be an exchange for me getting visitation. So he didn't rule on the visitation and said, well, let's see, the permanency hearing's in another month. We'll just wait and see what happens with that. This ended up being like a 2-part hearing because the DA for CPS had to do something that day or whatever. And everyone there just acted like the whole thing was a joke. Like, they laughed the entire time. And so, a month after that, we had the second part of the hearing. And, let's see, so this would be June 2016. Yeah. And then in August or September, I got the letter saying that my rights had been taken from me. And more than that, they had said that my son was kind of like just up for grabs. He wasn't in an adoptive placement, so they might consider working with other family members about my son, my grandmother being one of them. And then with my daughter, it said that she would be adopted by the foster family, the Browns, that she was staying with. So, I mean, they didn't even consider family getting her or keeping my children together. So, I filed an appeal, and ended up getting an appellate attorney. This ends up being like, this ended up taking about 6 more months for this all to be set up to go to court. Like, I didn't go to court, but like it's paperwork that gets sent off to the North Carolina Supreme Court. I think. No. There's some kind of other court that's like in between your county court and the North Carolina Supreme Court. And that appeal got denied, I think, in June 2017. And then I had to file another appeal on my own within like a few weeks. And I ended up doing that. I filed my own appeal to the North Carolina Supreme Court. And I think it was, I don't even remember when. It was, I think, the end of 2017. I got told that it was, I remember now. It was like October 2017. I was told that the North Carolina Supreme Court denied my appeal for the termination of parental rights. I tried to realize there was like such a scrunch in the time period, and I didn't have a computer to work on. There was a lot of stuff going on, and I was having to do this all by myself. All the attorneys I had talked to, they're like, wanted a $10,000 down payment. And that was for the North Carolina Supreme Court. Nobody I talked to knew how to file anything with the U.S. Supreme Court. And so I looked up a bunch of things myself, but I wasn't able to file in time. And that's when I discovered that pretty much half of my argument would have done no good, because disabled parents' rights are not protected equally as normal parents' rights. Disabled people do not have parental rights that are protected, and disability can be used as the sole reason for terminating parental rights. For me, my disability was used, and then they also used financial stuff too, where I can't remember. I'll have to show you guys the code. But the code is basically that I abandoned my children by not providing enough child support. And, you know, I was paying child support. They had never determined what was enough or not enough child support either. I was never told an amount to pay. Otherwise, I would have paid it, or my mother would have gladly paid it for me. And, but I figured out what it was. The exact code is that it had been 6 months or less of child support payments had been made. And at the time of the termination hearing, I had made just at 6 payments. And so I was just under what I needed to be at during the termination hearing. So they were able to put that in there too. So yeah, basically that's the beginning and middle and end of my case. I'm sorry for how long the video is and that some parts of this is so long. And I'm not even sure something like what's even important to talk about during this. And I don't want to sound too much like I'm trying to make excuses or anything like that either. My mother, she has her own side to the story of the things that she experienced with CPS, and I might do a video, or I might do a live where I interview her, so she can share her side of things. I'm kind of worried that she might end up talking a little bit too long about some things, but it's fine. Like I said, I will be doing some Q&As on the channel soon. Now that this is done, I feel more like I can have at least monthly Q&As, if not weekly. I would like to do weekly Q&As. Yeah, that's my CPS story. If you have any questions, you can either wait until I have a Q&A, or you can submit your questions in the comments below, and I will write them down and answer them when I start my live Q&A. It might be a good way to start out the Q&A until people can join the live. Oh, and also, for those of you who have had your rights terminated, and you have not been able to see your children, because that's a whole other side of this story that we're not going to get into right now. But if you're not able to see your children and you've lost full custody and rights to your children, I do have a Facebook group. It's called Life After Loss. You can look it up on Facebook, or you could look me up on Facebook. I will put the links in the description below. So hopefully, you'll be able to find me that way, or find the group, and hopefully we can get more people to join so that we can all support each other, and hopefully I can provide some self-help or self-therapy tips for you guys. So anyway, thank you guys for watching this video, and thank you so much for your continued support. I think it's 123 subscribers that we have now, and I'm really appreciative of that. I never expected anybody to care about this and what happened to me and my children, but I'm really grateful that some of y'all do. Thank you.